It's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock here in France. I'm Yalda Hakim, live in Paris, where President Macron tonight faces a new political crisis. Facing opposition from the left and the far right, as well as a growing economic emergency, Prime Minister Francois Bayrou has lost a vote of confidence in the French Assembly. We'll have all the reaction to that vote and tell you what it means for Macron, France and Europe.
And I'm Darren McCaffrey in Westminster. Also tonight, the new Home Secretary talks tough on migration, saying that she'll do whatever it takes to stop the small boats crossings. The starting gun is fired to replace Angela Rayner as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. We'll give the latest on the runners and riders. Plus, the head of the TUC throws down the gauntlet to the government, urging it to show workers whose side it was on. We'll be live from the TUC conference.
It's 7 o'clock in the UK, 8 o'clock here in Paris. I'm Yalda Hakim. France is tonight facing the prospect of having its fifth Prime Minister in less than 2 years. In the past hour, French MPs delivered a resounding vote of no confidence in the country's current Prime Minister, Francois Bayrou. There has been widespread opposition to his plans to scrap 2 public holidays and slash spending. The fall of Mr. Bayrou also heightens the political crisis for President Macron, facing pressure from both the left and the far right. It also comes as the country faces an acute economic crisis, which prompted the emergency measures by his Prime Minister. Well, we're going to have all the coverage and analysis here. But first, let's go to our Europe correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, who joins me here in Paris and is in fact in the building behind me in the National Assembly. And Alistair, I mean, he has been a dead man walking for weeks and he's finally been ousted.
Yeah, I mean, he knew himself that the result would go against him. Everybody expected that to be the case. It was always a matter of the size of the result, and in the end it was a majority of 170 that voted against Francois Bayrou. It wasn't even close, and it was a resounding rejection of his economic reforms that he proposed in an upcoming budget, reforms that were intended to make 44 billion euros worth of savings, reforms that were intended to put France back on an even economic keel. But ultimately, it did not have the popular support within the National Assembly, nor did it have public support within wider France. They were deeply controversial. There are differing opinions over what can and should be done to reform France's economy, but it will no longer be the responsibility of Francois Bayrou. He will tender his resignation, deliver it in person to the President Emmanuel Macron tomorrow, and then it'll be up to Emmanuel Macron to find his replacement. He said that he will do it quickly, and well, he might want to, because there's the threat of strikes and opposition on the streets in the coming days and weeks. And I think Macron, although he doesn't appear to be too concerned about any civil action, will at the same time want to head off the worst of it. So we'll see what decision Macron comes to. No doubt he's already been sounding out possible replacements. He too, like us, always knew that Bayrou would lose this vote, but it will be a decision as to whether or not he chooses someone close to him, someone who's loyal to the French president and sort of within his political camp, or whether he goes to the left wing of French politics, perhaps someone from the Socialist Party, who believe that they have a mandate to govern, have a mandate to have someone as a prime minister, and believe that they've been repeatedly overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, Ali, I guess the big question also is who would want this position? I mean, Francois Bayrou, 74 years old, a centrist, you know, launched into this vote of confidence into his bill, lasted 9 months. The man before him, which, you know, so many of our audience know well, Michel Barnier, lasted about 3 months. I mean, these are seasoned politicians who are up against a very fractured, split parliament. And when he did this, he knew that he wouldn't have the votes, but he did it anyway. And I guess the question is, what are the options for Emmanuel Macron, and who on earth would want to take up this role now?
Well, I mean, it's a poisoned chalice, isn't it? 4 prime ministers have now fallen in under 2 years. As you say, who would want to take on that job? I think that's probably the sort of question that someone who was not a politician would ask themselves. But actually, I spoke to a loyalist of Emmanuel Macron earlier today, and I asked him exactly that question, to which he probably quite rightly replied, saying, if you're asked to be Prime Minister, there's a lot of people who say yes to that. His point being that the option to be in power will be tempting for quite a number of people. But, it does call into question Emmanuel Macron's credibility, and that certainly, I think, has been the kind of the tone of the response from people across the political spectrum reacting to this confidence vote. Macron has a number of options. I think the most obvious and the one that he will pursue is to appoint a new Prime Minister. But, how many times can he lose Prime Ministers before his own fate really is a formality? So his other options are to call elections again in the National Assembly here to see whether he can get a majority. But National Rally, Marine Le Pen's party, is doing very well in the polls. That's exactly what they would like to happen. They believe that if they weren't necessarily to get a majority, they could certainly increase their share in the National Assembly. And the other option available was Macron. Something that his opponents want to happen is that he himself resigns. That is not going to happen, at least not in the near term.
Ali, well, as I was saying earlier, we're going to follow all of these developments very closely. Thank you so much for keeping us up to date so far. Well, let's come back here outside of the National Assembly and speak to French political commentator Agnès Poirier. Agnès, thank you so much for joining us. What an afternoon and what an evening. Even though we knew this would be the outcome, he himself, the ousted Prime Minister, knew. I guess the question is, why did he call a vote of confidence when he knew that he would be kicked out?
Well, it's interesting because he didn't call it a vote of confidence, although this is how institutionally it is known. He said, no, this is a vote of agreement. Let us all agree there is something, bigger than ourselves, which is called the French debt. And it is life-threatening. It's exactly what he said today. This is life-threatening. So can we agree on this? And then can we please debate? Everything is up for debate, he said, for 2 weeks. Notably, his idea of scrapping 2 bank holidays out of 11. 84% of the French people opposed it. And he said, but this is up for discussion. Let's discuss. And as a result, there are many more parliamentarians who want to end the conversation before it's even begun.
Agnès, I guess also I want our audiences to really understand that this isn't just about ousting another. I mean, that's shocking that this has happened again to President Macron, and I guess the French people are also fed up with every few months a new prime minister, that the political situation and crisis continues. But it's also deeper than that. It's bigger than that. And you talk there about the economy, the debt crisis. Help our audiences understand just how bad it is in France right now.
Well, it is rather bad. The French debt has reached 114% of GDP, and the debt is 3.3 trillion euros, and it cost us roughly our defense budget just to pay the interest rates. That was the case last year, and basically it's now what the French public deficit is almost 6% of GDP, so only Slovakia is doing worse in the whole of the Eurozone. So yes, the situation is pretty dire, and interest rates are going up. It's higher than Greece, and it's almost as high as Italy. So there's a point when, as all economists know, there's a moment when the debt goes faster and the interest rates go faster than you can control it.
Also, because President Macron presents himself as the strong man of Europe, and taking on Donald Trump and dealing with big issues like Ukraine, for example, other issues like Gaza. He speaks up on all of these issues. He takes on President Trump as well. And yet The domestic situation is so dire, and yet the feeling around France is it's too big to fail.
Well, yes, but I think it's a mistake to think that it's too big to fail. I mean, on one hand, you think, well, if France falls, if the debt is spiraling out of control, then the whole of Europe is going to be in trouble. You know, there's a kind of French denial about the situation. And it's interesting, almost a cognitive bias. You want to believe what, according to your beliefs. That is to say, if you ask the socialist or the far left, the rich must be taxed more, and therefore they must pay for it. If you ask the right-wing party, Les Républicains, they say we must stop or cut public spending, etc., etc. So in a way, we are all talking over each other, and we're trying to bend reality to our desires. You know, it's a sort of wishful thinking has replaced reality, at least in the French Parliament. But also, if you talk to your friends in France, they have a different opinion on debt, although the facts are the facts.
And for President Macron now, we know that it took him weeks to appoint Michel Barnier. This country cannot wait weeks now to resolve this issue. But as we were just saying there with my colleague Alistair Bunkle, sure, politicians will want to take the post of Prime Minister. If you're asked, then you take it. But they also know what their fate will be at the end of this.
Well, exactly. I mean, this afternoon, the socialists, the far left, the far right say to Bayrou, to his face, we will bring down your successor. So, because they all want to force President Macron either to resign, which is not going to do, it's not in his personality, it's never been done during the Fifth Republic that has existed since 1958. No French president has resigned since, and also because too many things, as you said, are happening elsewhere in the world, and President Macron is pretty good at it. But of course, the French are not very grateful. They just look at what's happening domestically. And the instability, in a way, is our responsibility. The French people, the French electorate, didn't give him a majority to govern. So since 2022, they elected him, but didn't give him a majority. So there's a kind of dissonance. You know, he's not going to resign because he's been elected at the universal suffrage, which is very powerful. And the French, if given the chance to actually vote again, would actually probably, most probability, bring an even more fractured, more fragmented parliament. So I think, you know, the French need to also make up their opinion or decide whether they're also responsible for the mess we're in.
Agnès, it's really fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date. That was Agnès Poirier, French political commentator, just giving us a sense of the dire situation here, a political crisis, a debt crisis. We will continue our coverage throughout the evening. I'll be back in about 20 minutes' time. But for now, Darren, back to you.
Yalda, thank you very much indeed. OK, we're just going to bring you up to date with a little bit of breaking news that we broke, in the last hour or so. That regards to Heathrow Airport. It has evacuated Terminal 4 with the emergency services responding to what they call a possible hazardous materials incident. This is video that is propped up on social media. Heathrow Airport spokesperson saying the Terminal 4 check-in has been closed and that the terminal itself has been evacuated while emergency services respond to this incident. We're also hearing that effectively they're advising passengers not to travel to Terminal 4. And in fact, National Rail saying the trains are not stopping at Terminal 4. We've also got a statement from the London Fire Brigade. This is what they're saying in the last couple of minutes. Firefighters are responding to a possible hazardous materials incident at Heathrow Airport. Specialist crews have been deployed to carry out an assessment of the scene, and part of the airport has been evacuated as a precaution whilst firefighters respond. The brigade was first called about the incident at 1 minute past 5, effectively, 17:01, and the crews from Feltham, Heathrow, Wembley and the surrounding fire stations have been sent to the scene. OK, let's move on to politics back here, which, a bit like France, has provided its fair share of turmoil and disunity this past week. We are told that Starmer 2.0 has begun this weekend, and another reset to try and turn the corner on what has been, let's be honest, a pretty difficult start for the Labour government. Apparently, the Cabinet have even been told to step up a gear, which is rather extraordinary, isn't it, given the fact that they came into government after 14 years in opposition with a stonking majority. It does somewhat pose the question, what gear have they been in for the past year? But is this really a genuine, bold reset? Let's look back to Tony Blair. Do you remember him? Well, this is what he had to say about his first term in office.
I believe that we are at our best when at our boldest. And so far, we've made a good start. But frankly, we've not been bold enough.
So more than 20 years on, what about Keir Starmer? Well, let's be honest, the last week's cabinet reshuffle was just that, a shuffle, mostly the same ministers, just in different jobs. Are there any new bold policies to date? Well, we've heard about suggestions about using military sites to house asylum seekers, or that we could suspend visas in recent days. But are they really radical? But more fundamentally, I suppose, does anyone really understand what the government is actually trying to achieve? Well, this all could be up for debate as that deputy leadership race gets underway, with lots of different fractions, right and left inside Labour, clearly pretty unhappy about how things are, but they're also increasingly happy to show that discontent in public. So more than a year in, is it right simply to suggest that national renewal is what the government is about? Is that really quite cutting it? Let's get the thoughts now of our Deputy Political Leader, Sam Coates, who's got today's first report.
5 national missions. 1 card, 6 steps. This plan for change, we will stick to it.
What is Keir Starmer's government actually for? Today, another go.
I'll do whatever it takes. I will do whatever it takes. I'll do whatever it takes to get the job done.
This time, putting migration front and centre. The new Home Secretary, her first public engagement, meeting her counterpart in the Trump government. Not quite going that far, but the shift is clear.
Making sure that we are able to return out of our countries people who have no right to be in our countries and send them back to their home countries. So for the countries that do not play ball, we've been talking about how we can take much more coordinated action between the Five Eyes countries. And for us, that means including possibly the cutting of visas in the future, just to say, you know, we do expect countries to play ball, play by the rules, and if one of your citizens has no right to be in our country, you do need to take them back.
So cutting visas to countries that don't agree returns deals as Reform have proposed and as the Tories have proposed?
Well, this is a Labour government with Labour policy and Labour proposals.
A new Home Secretary, a new tone from the top. Shabana Mahmood is adopting Reform UK proposals on returns agreements with other countries, while also outlining her long-standing position in favour of ID cards, even through periods where Keir Starmer's Labour Party was against. This might make her more popular with the public at large, but it's unlikely to endear her to the Labour Party. Also walking towards a row, the new Work and Pension Secretary in charge of welfare. Having parked this issue after a pre-summer defeat, he issued a statement asking tough questions as he brands young people out of work a concern. All these signals likely to unnerve union delegates in Brighton as a rapid timetable is set to elect a new Labour deputy leader.
There needs to be a left candidate for deputy leader of the Labour Party, and by that I mean someone who voted for a ceasefire and someone who voted against disability benefit cuts, because the deputy leader is meant to be the voice of members at the top table. This unholy rush for the nomination process of just a couple of days shows a leadership that seems determined to shut down discussion.
So much attention will now be off the new ministers and on the deputy leadership contest. Division and discord, just when Keir Starmer needs to focus his troops on his vision for the future. Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, a reminder, of course, that Sky News will be hosting the immigration debate in Birmingham this Wednesday. It'll be hosted by Sky's Trevor Phillips and representatives of the main parties will attend, and you may get a chance to be in the audience, indeed even ask a question. All you need to do is scan that QR code that's now back on your screen. Coming up later tonight, though, we're going to be looking at tomorrow's papers. I'm sure they're going to be chock full of the latest political news, and we're going to have an extended press preview from 10:30 this evening. Tonight's guests will be the columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards and the former Conservative Special Advisor Salma Shah. Do not miss that, 10:30 tonight here on Sky. OK, you're watching the Politics Hub. Up next, more on the new struggle kicking off in the Labour Party as the tension turns to who'll succeed Angela Rayner as Starmer's number 2. That's next.
It's the country's #1 issue right now. Many are alarmed about their changing communities.
It's an invasion, isn't it?
I think that solution comes through dialogue, not ranting off.
We don't know who they are. I don't think that there's an issue.
But are the people who matter listening? We'll bring key leaders together to debate the crisis that's dividing the nation. The immigration debate on Sky News. Get the full story first.
Hear that whistle and that crunch, we know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Welcome back. Now, the race to replace Angela Rayner as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party has truly begun. Today, the party confirmed the timetable for when her successor will be in place. Well, our political correspondent, Serena Barker-Singh, has been looking at how the contest will play out.
This leadership race is important. The Deputy Leader is not only the second highest ranking politician in the Labour Party, but this race comes at a time when the parliamentary Labour Party is particularly fractious. Members will also get their say, and some think it could be a referendum on Keir Starmer himself and his government. So when does it all kick off? Well, extremely quickly, actually, because Labour's National Executive Committee have already met and decided on the timetable and process. Candidates essentially have a day now to decide if they want to throw their hat into the ring, because nominations open on the 9th of September, and a round of hustings with MPs will follow. And the deadline to cast their nominations is very shortly after that. Now, the threshold, though, is very high. They need 80 MP nominations to get to the next round. That's 20% of the parliamentary party just to get on the ballot. And then candidates must also have at least either 3 affiliates groups, including 2 unions, or 5% of local parties, all before Labour conference on the 27th of September. And it's only after all of that when members will get their say. Now, voting will be both electronic and postal, where every member gets 1 vote. And for members, you have to have been continuously in the Labour Party for at least 6 months in order to vote. It will be a single-round preferential voting system, so candidates will need more than 50% of the vote, with the final result on the 25th of October. So this whole process means it's likely that not many MPs will make it to the final stages, but it will be an interesting test of where this unwieldy party is at. You've got different groups in the Labour Party, so for Starmer loyalists, there's no clear choice. Some prominent women cabinet ministers have already ruled themselves out. But for Starmer critics, they have now the perfect vehicle to air their grievances, a drawn-out contest which could easily overshadow the Labour conference. Then those in the middle say they will unite the party. And you never know, the ambitious but unpredictable 2024 intake might put up one of their own. Essentially, the sudden nature of this contest, coupled with the speed, really means anyone now has a shot.
Well, our political correspondent Liz Bates is with me here in the studio. And Liz, the list, in many ways, is getting longer simply because we're continuing to speculate about who might stand rather than who we definitely know will stand.
Partly, Darren, just because nobody's declared yet. And I think the government, because they were just doing their reshuffle over the weekend, they've only just turned their attention to this. Those kind of agitators on the left wing of the Labour Party would love this to be a kind of battle for the soul of the party that includes a lot of destabilising criticism of Keir Starmer. But the problem for them is, and you saw Serena just set out the timetable, they just don't have enough time to get the support behind one candidate. So it's all, at the moment, we don't really know what's going on. This is why we have such a long list of candidates. Now, let me talk you through some of them, because a lot of these people, you won't know who they are, but I'll just give you a bit of a quick
I mean, it's bad
debrief.
if I don't know who they are. I mean, that's a bad
Darren,
sign.
you will know who they are. Some of our viewers may not know who they are. First of all, Alison McGovern. Now, I should say, one of the reasons Alison McGovern has emerged as a government frontrunner is because there's real consensus in the party and in the government that it has to be a northern woman for representation. You know, partly because Angela Rayner has just gone, and so they feel that they have to have a northern woman to replace her. Alison McGovern is a minister, you know, I would say pretty far to the right on the party. She's very well liked, particularly among the new intake. She could be a potential government frontrunner. Now, another person who has been talked about a lot, Louise Haigh, former Transport Secretary. You remember she had very red hair. It's not as red as that anymore. She went through a bit of a difficult period. She was ousted from government in November because of something that happened with a previous employer, a mobile phone, a police interview about it.
We remember Mobile Phone Gate.
She had to quit government. She's been laying low ever since. I don't think she'll pop her head up, but there's a lot of people in the party that really like her and would really like to see her stand.
Andy Burnham said he'd quite like to see her stand.
Yes, and Andy Burnham's had a lot to say on this contest, and some of the MPs are really pleased about that and others are not. Lucy Powell, now she has just left government. She was the leader of the House of Commons. She is definitely considering standing, whether she will get the support and whether MPs might feel like, well, why should we give you a job just because you've been dumped from government? There's a few different issues around Lucy Powell, but I think she would really like to stand. Let's see if she gets the support. Another figure, and I've seen Emily Thornberry today, basically lapping Parliament, trying to, any MP that she can see, she's trying to, she's literally got a list in her hand. She's got a piece of paper marking down the people that she thinks might give her some support. I said to her, you're going to run, Emily? And she said, I don't know yet. And that is because she's just trying to get to that very high threshold of 80 MPs. So let's see. She's potentially a bit of a divisive character, but she has served for the Labour Party in opposition. I think she does have a good standing within the party, so she could be a bit of a threat. Another candidate, Rosina Allen-Khan, I think she would really have liked to be in the government. She served as well in opposition as a shadow mental health minister, would really have liked a government position, and I think now thinks maybe I'll stand as deputy leader. there's a bit of kind of two fingers to Sir Keir Starmer potentially. She is not a northern woman. She has her constituency is Tooting. That could stand against her. Shall I keep rattling through the candidates, Darren, or we're running out of time?
Well, I think we're kind of running out of time a little bit, as in it is an exhausted list, isn't it? I think what's fascinating also about this, I don't know if you feel the same, Liz, which is, like, I mean, there's not open mutiny against Keir Starmer, that's too strong a word, but, my word, there's a lot of MPs very discontent with his leadership, and this potential deputy leadership race is going to turn into a massive fight about where lots of MPs want to see the direction of the party go for the rest of this parliament. That's the worst possible thing for the Prime Minister.
But that is exactly what the government is trying to head off, and I think that's partly why the timetable is so short. From the government's perspective, the absolute ideal scenario is they put a candidate forward and the rest of the party, particularly the left wing of the party, just simply doesn't have time to get their own candidate on the ballot. And that's it. It's the government's pick, and all of that kind of, that anger and that hostility and the airing of dirty laundry, all of that goes away. That is their ideal scenario. We did see, I have just come actually from the PLP. So that is a meeting that happens every now and then of all the Labour MPs. Sometimes it's well attended and they have somebody big speaking there. Well, today it was the Prime Minister alongside his Chief Whip after that reshuffle, really trying to put on a big show of unity. There was a lot of applause. He was talking about all the challenges they face, Farage, etc. And it did seem like they were in quite good spirits. I think they are concerned about the deputy leadership contest, but at the moment they are riding quite high. And as I say, it might end up being a very divisive contest. If they can get the timetable right, it could actually work in their favour. OK, interesting. Liz, as always, thank you very much indeed. Liz Bates there. Well, let's go back now to Paris, which is also going through its own political turmoil this evening, and let's rejoin Yalda, who's live for us in the French capital. Yalda.
Darren, thank you so much, and welcome back to Paris to our audience, where this evening Emmanuel Macron's Prime Minister has decisively lost a vote of confidence, plunging France into new political crisis at a time when its economy is also causing concern. Well, let's get more analysis on the situation. Joining me now is Eleanor Carrois, member of the French National Assembly from President Macron's Renaissance Party, and she also represents French people living overseas. Eleanor, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. What a moment in French politics. Since the Fifth Republic, was started back in 1958, no Prime Minister has called for a vote of confidence like this and been ousted as a result in this way. And we've also seen President Macron lose another Prime Minister just in the space of 9 months.
Yes, you're right. This is a totally unseen situation. And yet, it is also the chronicle of a death foretold, because we knew since the very moment François Bayrou announced that he was going to call this vote that all the oppositions were going to oppose. So there was no suspense today. And yet we do need to build a compromise. He was not asking people to vote for or against him. I did not vote for him. He was asking MPs to vote for the objective of reducing public death and working on a budget, which is what we should be doing as MPs. So it was expected, it is worrisome, but at the same time, it is something that we need to move forward and build a compromise.
But will the Parliament be able to move forward? Will these lawmakers be able to stand by, allow the French president to choose another Prime Minister, which frankly, this position feels like a poisoned chalice?
It does, right? And it doesn't seem that obvious. But I do think there is some improvement. If you think about it, a year ago, after the snap elections that President Macron called, and we spoke at the same, exactly, just a year ago, the left was saying, well, we were first. They don't have a majority, but they said we arrived first. So we want our program, nothing but our program, and all of our program to be applied, and that's it. And the discussion, that's what Jean-Luc Mélenchon was saying. the right was saying, well, we have Michel Barnier at the time, who is a Republican, so it was a prime minister from the right, who had been appointed. They said, well, we only have 49 MPs out of 577, but it's okay, we won the election. So there was no way they were going to talk to each other. Right now, when you listen to what they're saying, both in the Socialist Party and in the Les Républicains, which is the right-wing party, they're saying, well, we need to talk to each other. We've always said that, us in the center, but more people are understanding that we need to build a compromise.
So would you categorize the events of today as a failure for France, for French society? I know you're saying we need to move on, but the situation is that it's a political crisis and also a massive debt crisis as well.
It is true, and when you look at it, it's not looking positive. But on the other hand, what was the alternative? The alternative was a discussion on a budget with MPs that do not want to get out of the poster of their very, the show that they're making, if they're in the opposition and they want to stay in the opposition. And ultimately, we were going to have a similar situation at the end of the year in December, where we absolutely need to vote a budget. Now we're having it in September. It's a bit early. Maybe we would have liked a more smooth going back to school and going back to the National Assembly, but at least it gives us some time to really have these discussions that are necessary and to have a budget by the end of the year.
There are all sorts of options being discussed, including one from your party about President Macron coming into some kind of power sharing deal. I mean, is there any reality to any of this?
Well, that is a reality. Right now, we do not have a majority, and we can find allies, we can build coalitions, you can name it however you want, socle commun, coalition, there's several names, but the truth is you need to make compromises. And for us, French people, used to having it either white or black, majority or opposition, it is not natural, but ultimately we'll get there. Other countries in Europe get there, parliamentarian countries get there, and it's just a matter of changing the mindset. And the way you can change this mindset is realizing how complicated the situation is and how much there is a need for a budget.
And not just a budget, but we're looking at a massive economic crisis that this country is currently facing. I mean, we're talking about government spending that is the highest in the world.
I know, and we're all for cutting government spendings, and this is what my group has been saying and proposing here at the National Assembly, and the left does not want that. We're not in a crisis as Greece was or Spain was.
But it's being compared to Greece.
I know, because you have to be realistic. We have a very generous social system. In France, if you are sick, if you are retired, if you have any trouble in your life, the state will come and help you out. It is not the case in neighboring countries. And I think we need to preserve this, but we also need to understand that we have fewer young people working and more older people. And if you want to keep those solidarities, those generational solidarities, you need to accept that more people need to work, ultimately, more people need to pay taxes, and that work also needs to pay more, because it's not fair that French people will work and have very low salaries. So it is a real change in mindset, and that's very difficult to do when you have such a divided assembly.
Is France ready for that? Are the French people ready for the change in mindset? Because the pension age is constantly debated and discussed. The far right, for example, say they will reverse it back to 60, not the 64 or whatever it is at the moment. We're talking about a pension. 25% of the state budget goes to pensions. That's a huge amount.
I know, and this is why we tried to reform it. And it wasn't a crazy reform. It was only going to 64. When you look at other European countries, they're working until 66-year-old or 67, even more. But this was a major issue, and the National Rally, which claims now to be a very liberal party, voted with La France Insoumise, the far left party, because they actually did not vote in the interest of French people. They voted because they want to see Emmanuel Macron out and they want to take power. Well, right now, they're not going to change. I mean, they're the extremes, they're populist, they have this agenda. But other parties have a different agenda, and this is why, even if it's a complicated day for French politics, I am relatively confident that people will actually sit in that table.
How does this affect Europe and you know, the borders beyond France, you know, it will have major impact, not just on the French political situation, but the debt crisis that we're talking about, the decisions that need to be made for Ukraine, for other issues that Europe is currently facing.
It's great that you're speaking about this because I've responded to several interviews today, French newspaper, no one is looking at the global picture. And the global picture is that. And President Macron has had a huge leadership in the international scene, even with a very small majority, even with François Bayrou being in a very weak position as he was this summer, he was able to move forward in the coalition of the willings with the UK, with other countries, and be at the table with President Trump and President Zelensky. And this needs to continue. And even within the European Union, we've seen how the European Commission failed to negotiate an acceptable agreement. When you have the agreement, the US-EU agreement that was negotiated over the summer, this is not acceptable. So we need a strong French voice, and this is why we need stability, and this is why I personally voted for this government, not for François Bayrou, not even for his proposals, but for a continuity and a stability.
Eleanor, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. We're speaking there to one politician who is hoping that the lawmakers in the building behind me in the National Assembly will be able to move on from this moment. But this is a country now facing a political crisis, a debt crisis. And the big question is, can they move on? How quickly will they be able to move on? And how quickly can President Macron move on to focus on the bigger global issues beyond just the issues that France is currently facing? We will be back again at 9 p.m. for my show, The World, where we will be analysing the situation here in France and the ripple effect it has on Europe and the international community. But Darren, back to you now in the studio.
OK, Yalda, live for us there in Paris. Thank you very much indeed. We're just going to bring you some pictures now from Downing Street, just a warning that there is some flash photography coming up, and they are pictures of the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, who, as you can see, has arrived in the last couple of minutes at Downing Street. He is meeting Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. He's on a 3-day visit, in fact, to the UK, and it comes at a time in which the government's policy on the Palestinian statehood is very much in focus. Suggestions from the Prime Minister that they may well end up recognising the state of Palestine in this month, effectively, around the UN General Assembly. The talks, we're told, from the Palestinian side are an attempt to put pressure on the Prime Minister to call for an end to what they describe as the aggression, destruction and starvation being inflicted upon the Palestinian people. So that's Keir Starmer meeting Mahmoud Abbas, who is the Palestinian Authority President in Downing Street in the last couple of minutes. OK, let's return to politics and the deputy leadership race of the Labour Party. A little earlier, I spoke with the Labour MP for Brent East, that's Dawn Butler, who told us that she's not going to be running in the contest, saying that her priority is London. Lots of speculation that she wants to be the next mayor of London. But I did get her take on what the party needs to do in her mind next with this deputy leadership race. Let's talk about the deputy leadership itself, though, in terms of who might stand. Who would you back, effectively?
Because there's a long list at the moment.
It is a long list. It's getting shorter, but it's still a long list.
It is, and I think with the truncated timetable, we will really know by Wednesday, but some new names got thrown in today, like Paula Barker, Olivia Blake, Bell Ribera Addy, you know, all those names got thrown in today. That's
interesting. Do you think it needs to be a woman, then?
I do, actually, I must say. I think Angela was a great sort of deputy leader, and I feel we should replace a woman with a woman. I think we need women at the top and in leadership positions in the Labour Party, because often we get criticised for that. So I would like it to.
What about someone from the north of England? Because a lot of criticism has also been that Labour recently has been too London-centric.
You know I'm London.
But
I understand the point. Yeah, I totally understand the point you're making, and we have to take into consideration the whole country, and people need to feel that they're connected, you know, and connected to Labour government. So I understand that, and so that's why it's quite interesting these new names that have been thrown into the mix. You know, Annalisa Dodds, as I say, you know, Paula Barker. Interesting names.
Now you've also been involved in this thing called mainstream.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
It's for radical realists.
Radical realists?
Yeah.
Can you explain that in a simple way?
In a simple way, it's sensible policies engaging with the public to what the country really wants and needs. There's some people that claim to represent the public. They don't represent the majority of the public. They represent a fringe group. So this is about looking at policies and strategies and just bringing it all together to help the government.
Does that fringe group include Downing Street then? Do they understand people's priorities?
Well, I was actually more thinking of another grouping who had their conference last week, the name we won't mention. I was actually thinking of them. But no, I think Downing Street at the moment, it's been, you know, an interesting year. But I think what we need to do is look outside of the bubble, the Downing Street bubble, and bring everybody's views to Downing Street. And that's what needs to happen, so that we can celebrate the things that we're doing well, and we can critique the things that we haven't done so well, and give people hope. At the end of the day, a government needs to give its citizens hope, because if we don't, that gap will be filled by others.
Dot, isn't it extraordinary? I mean, you were in opposition for 14 years. I mean, you think you're going to sort things out when you're in opposition. You've had a pretty terrible first year, let's be honest about it. I don't think anyone's going to say it's been the best year for this new Labour government. Hasn't the Prime Minister going to take some responsibility for that? Isn't it kind of down to him?
But it's a bit unfair, though, isn't it? Like 14 years to 1 year. It's a bit unfair to kind of...
No, but I meant as in you think Labour would have a definition of what it wanted to achieve over 14 years in opposition. You'd work that out rather than trying to scramble in government about trying to work out what people want and what the government should be doing.
I mean, I hear you, but I think part of the problem was the state of the country's finances. When Labour came in, they wasn't expecting it to be that bad. And so they had to make some decisions, some uncomfortable decisions. And then I think, you know, in part, it needs redirecting. And that's what mainstream's all about. Mainstream's about redirecting the thought processes of Number 10 and expanding that bubble. It does feel like there's a little group of people in a bubble and they don't realise that critical friends are good things. You don't want to be in a room where everyone's just agreeing. You need that critical infrastructure in the decision-making process.
Is Keir Starmer a radical realist?
No, I don't think he's a radical realist, but he will get to know radical realists and I think he'll like us.
So you think there's a big section of the party that are essentially going to try and force the Prime Minister's hands into this kind of radical realism?
It's not about forcing, it's about showing what makes the country work and tick. When you've got people who are working but are still having to use food banks, it shows you that there's something fundamentally wrong with work. It means that, you know, we need fair pay, we need to end fire and rehire. So all of those things builds into the very structure of society. When you look at gambling, one of my campaigns, you know, why have we got high streets like mine in Brent full of gambling shops that's taking money out of the pockets who can least afford it, and they are undertaxed? So things like that you have to build and develop.
But doesn't this just mean that we're going to have now lots more division within the party, lots of different... Well, I mean, you've just said you don't think the Prime Minister agrees with lots of what you want to achieve within Labour. That means there's going to be more infighting, doesn't it?
No, I think, look, the Prime Minister's busy, right? The role of the Prime Minister is extremely busy. So what we're doing is giving him stuff that's already packaged and well thought out and well thought through, and then say, look, this is where we think we should be going as a Labour government.
Do you think Keir Starmer should remain in post until the next election?
Yeah, Keir Starmer's our Prime Minister. He was elected and he's our Prime Minister.
That was John Butler speaking to me a little earlier. We're just going to bring you an update on that breaking news in the last hour or so coming from Heathrow Airport. It is evacuated at Terminal 4 and the advice is very much not to go there. We've just had this tweet in from Heidi Alexander, or a post on X, I should say, as it's called these days. This is what the Transport Secretary had to say. Emergency services are responding to an incident at Heathrow's Terminal 4, which has prompted its evacuation. I'm monitoring updates from those on the scene, as well as Heathrow Airport itself. Passengers should not travel to Terminal 4 until advised otherwise. And we're also hearing from the London Ambulance Service saying it is at this incident that members of their hazardous area response team are there. They're saying this is an ongoing incident and that they are working with their other emergency service partners. And we'll get more on that, of course, as we get it here on Sky News. OK, you're watching the Politics Hub on this Monday night. Up next, the head of the TUC urges the government to deliver change and accuses Nigel Farage of selling out working people. The latest from the Trade Unions Congress annual conference, live next.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
A show of military might and menace.
Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day.
It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov.
The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past.
There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we have to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world?
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order.
The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News?
Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
British media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the Politics Hub. Now, while the Prime Minister tries to get on with resetting his government, the leader of Britain's trade unions has urged that they show working people whose side they're on. In his keynote speech to the TUC conference in Brighton, the General Secretary, Paul Novak, urged the government to deliver the changes they promised when they were elected last year. He also took aim at Nigel Farage, accusing the Reform UK leader of selling out working people.
Nigel Farage, it is about time you came clean about whose side you're really on. Because here's the truth, you are not representing working people, you are selling them out. To those who voted reform at the last election, to those who are considering voting for reform, I get your frustration with mainstream politics. I get your sense that change isn't coming fast enough, and I respect your right to vote for whoever you choose. But ask yourself this fundamental question. Do you believe in your gut that Nigel Farage really cares about the people of Clacton when he's off collecting his speaker's fees in the United States? Do you believe that Richard Tice really worries about the people of Skegness while he's living it up at home in Dubai? Or are they just right-wing con men lining their own pockets?
Well, let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who I think has probably been to more TUC conferences than almost anyone else in the country, I'm sure. John, let's start, if we can, with reform. Really interesting, isn't it? There is a concerted effort by the unions now to attack Nigel Farage.
Yes, over his tax affairs and publishing tax returns, that sort of thing. And yes, it was pretty punchy stuff from Mr. Novak today. He also launched a personal attack on Robert Jenrick, talking about his Ozempic and his haircut. And he said talked about his inner ugliness. And then he talked about Prime Minister Netanyahu being guilty of genocide. That's further than senior Labour politicians have gone. Punchy speech got the day off to a lively start.
And John, let's talk about Labour, because obviously the unions are a big part of the party and its traditions. What's the sense there about the last week and essentially what looks like quite large divisions now within the party about what the Prime Minister should do with the rest of this Labour government in terms of bringing us up to the end of the term?
Well, a lot's been going on here, Darren, on the whole Labour deputy leadership race, because here we've had two potential candidates appearing to woo the unions. We've had Richard Bergen from the left of the party. We've had Alison McGovern. Alison McGovern at a fringe meeting said, hold your horses when she was asked. Mr Bergen told Sky News there had to be a left-wing candidate. He wants someone who voted against welfare cuts and pro-Gaza and so on. Now, let me explain why I'm here. I'm outside the Grand Hotel. Just behind me, in a big suite, 220 union leaders, politicians are at the regular traditional General Council dinner. So from the Cabinet, we have Wes Streeting, we have Ed Miliband, who's making the after-dinner speech for the Labour Party. We have ministers Ray Collins and Angela Smith from the Lords. We have Dame Angela Eagle, who was shuffled last week. Then a lot of the big trade union leaders like, for example, we have Sharon Graham from Unite. We have Dave Ward from the Communications Workers Union. A trio of RMT leaders in a week when their members are striking on the tube. Current leader Dempsey and then Mick Lynch and Mick Cash as well. Also, a really unexpected person here turned up today, Sam Tarry, who is the partner of Angela Rayner, and of course they bought that flat just down the coast at Hove. He turned up, pretty low profile, didn't make himself known to many people, chaired a fringe meeting and he insisted no questions. But it was actually pretty brave of Mr Tarry to turn up. So big Labour presence here tonight, always is for this dinner. The 200 people in the dinner, it's just started at 7:30. I'm told there's a vegetarian option. I suppose that Ed Miliband will be relieved that it's not a bacon sandwich on the menu.
And maybe you too, John. I'm sure you're not a vegetarian either. But thank you very much indeed. John Craig there live in Brighton. Thank you. OK, that's it from me for tonight. Sophie will be back tomorrow night at 7. Up next, though, it is the UK Tonight with Sarah J. Mee, including more on that breaking news in the last hour or so that Heathrow Terminal 4 has been evacuated. Clearly, there will be flight delays as ambulance and fire crews attend that incident at Heathrow. Stay tuned for that. I'll see you soon.